Welcome everybody to the delayed start of Satisfactionist Live, which actually started 10 minutes ago in my own mind and is actually starting now. What I mean by that is the fact that I kind of messed up and started our show tonight. We were having a great conversation. I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm not streaming to the web, so we are rebooting this right now. Anyway, welcome everybody to Satisfactionist Live. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, you knew nothing of what just happened. So good for you. So I'm going to start over again and first start off by what are we drinking tonight? Tonight we are drinking a Masseria Lavelli Verdecca 2017. This retails for about $20. And the 2017 scored 88 points, although, oh my gosh, I can't believe it because it is so freaking amazing. Wonderful golden straw color. This is not an oaked, in the barrel wine, but it is absolutely incredible and amazing. And I picked this wine because we are going to be talking about salt. And I thought, white wines tend to go well with things like seafood and things like that. And then that made me think of the sea, and that made me think of salt and sea salt and all kinds of things related to salt. And today we're going to be talking to Chef Melissa Monsibais. Melissa, how are you?
Hey, I'm great.
Well, awesome. So
And it was the real thing too. Yeah.
let's get into a little bit of this conversation around salt.
Okay.
Help me understand uh, what are probably some of the myths that go around related to salt.
Well, the biggest one is that all salt is bad for you. And it is true that anything that you have too much of can be bad for you. But when it comes to salt, not all salt is equal. You have table salt, which is a highly processed food product. It's mined from underneath the earth. What they do is they drill down into the salt mines, they pump the mine full of water, and they create this really briny liquid that they then pump out, and they put it in these vacuum sealers where they boil it and they get all the moisture out of it. And what's left behind is these very fine, pure white salt crystals. And I mean, this is what you get with Morton table salt, right? And you know their logo, when it rains, it pours. Part of the reason that Morton and their salt and their process for making this salt was so popular is because prior to table salt, salt was like a hand harvested product. It has been mined for a few hundred years, but for the most part, even the mined salt, it was still kind of wet and still kind of clumpy, and it doesn't really lend itself to like sprinkling on your food very well. If you wanted to cook with it, It worked a little bit better. But, if you wanted to add salt to some already cooked food, it just didn't work very well in its natural form. So the Morton people came up with this process. They refined the process, and you have these beautiful pure white crystals that just sprinkle beautifully. The problem with it is, first of all, it's iodized. Why is table salt iodized? Because back at the beginning part of the 1900s, a lot of people had issues with nutrition, malnutrition, specifically goiters. And people develop goiters. It's a thyroid issue because they're not getting enough iodine. You have to remember back then, we didn't really have highways that crisscrossed the whole country, and food wasn't being transported the way it is now. And so they hit upon the idea, well, what is the product that everybody has access to, that everybody uses, that we could put iodine in? Salt. So nowadays, we don't have a problem with goiters anymore. It's relatively unheard of. We have better access to food and more knowledge about nutrition. And what the iodine does is it gives us metallic flavor to the salt. If you only know table salt, you probably don't even notice it. But once you start eating cleaner salts, it really becomes pronounced. And I can't stomach table salt. I'm like, ugh.
Well,
It's like,
it's funny because I a little while back I was in the grocery store and we were shopping around and I was looking for a different kind of salt and something beyond sea salt, which is what I use a lot in cooking, and I'm sure a lot of people do. And I picked up this stuff. It said real salt, and it was mined out of Utah. And they uh, I use a process where they actually have an underground mine where they go for salt. And I found that the salt was really different tasting. It wasn't salty. It was it had more of a kind of a minerally taste, and you could put you not that you put a bunch of it on your food, but you put a pretty liberal amount, and you didn't get that overwhelming salty taste from it. It actually made the food even taste better
yeah.
as well.
And the reason, part of the reason for that is your kosher salt. It's a coarser grind, right? It's not as finely processed. So you can actually use more kosher salt and still end up with less salt on your food, because the finer the grind, the saltier it's going to make your food. So, and I'm sure that salt didn't have the iodine in it, so it didn't have that metallic flavor.
Well, and something else too. I remember when you had come over, you called it a finishing salt, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, this is what you put on, at the very end to, give it a little bit of a flavor boost. So why? Okay, so when you're cooking, uh, and I'll just ask this: so when you're maybe working in restaurants or you're doing catering or things like that, how many different types of salt do you use, and does the salt change by dish?
Um, Mostly in cooking, professional cooking, we use kosher salt. So we're going to use kosher salt when you season a piece of chicken before you put it on the grill, when you season your pasta water, when you're seasoning your vegetables for saute or whatnot, blanching. We're generally going to use kosher salt. If you took a salt like a hand harvested sea salt, say a Fleur de Sel from Brittany, or you took a flavored salt like an umami enhanced salt, or even the flakes like the Maldon flakes that I use when I finish something. Those things are so subtle and nuanced, it's going to be completely lost in the cooking process. So kosher salt is your best bet because it's clean, it's a fairly large grain, and it's going to provide saltiness without over salting the food. These other cool, fun salts, and I've got at least a dozen of them here. I can show. I'm gonna
Well,
pop.
cool. We're gonna do a salt tour in a minute then.
We'll do a little salt tour. Those are that's that finishing touch. That's what takes an already good meal over the top, kind of like the glass of wine, right? It's the cherry on the sundae. It's what takes something really good and can make it perfect. But
So, let's start walking through some of what you got there. So, and I maybe think about it from a standpoint of like, I don't know, maybe I'm not sure if this is how you have it laid out, but is it like this is where you start and this is where you finish, or do you just have a variety of things that can do multi-purpose stuff?
well, the salts that I have, I like to use different salts for different things. So, um, truffle salt. This is, I don't know if you can see, this is a little one from San Francisco Salt Company. It is highly aromatic. I wish we had smell-o-vision because the aroma is heavenly. It is fresh shaved truffle. And what they do here, which is a little bit different from truffle oil, a lot of chefs don't like truffle oil because it's kind of a fake flavor. But what I love about truffle salt is it's the pure shaved truffle in the salt. So not only does it make it extremely aromatic, it just infuses it with truffle flavor. So this, when I make an omelet or scrambled eggs or potatoes, is heavenly. It just takes it to a whole other level. I love this one. Okay, so Red Boat. Red Boat does a lot of great fish sauces. Okay, fish sauce is loaded with umami. Personally, even
Now,
though
is umami another term for MSG?
MSG is loaded with umami, but umami is not exactly the same as MSG.
Okay.
Now, MSG is naturally occurring in foods such as Parmesan, tomatoes, specifically canned tomatoes. That's why pizza and pasta are so darn good. There's this addictiveness to the flavor of those foods. So when we say umami, it is an intense flavor profile that occurs naturally in foods, but is chemically replicated with what you see at the grocery store sold as MSG under labels like Accent. So it's like a chemical copy of what occurs in food naturally.
So Red Boat is a little bit more of the naturally occurring umami.
Yes. So you see it says the essence of umami. Now it's mainly sea salt with a lot of the same ingredients that they use to make sea salt. I'm sorry, that they use to make fish sauce. So it does contain fish. It's not good if anybody is a vegan or allergic to seafood of any kind. But this is, again, is a finishing salt. So it adds not just saltiness to the food, but a savory unctuousness that you might not realize is there, but you would certainly enjoy the effects of it.
So would you find this a lot in Asian cooking, or like what are the kind of dishes that salt goes best with?
Well, and Asian cooking relies for saltiness a lot on your soy sauces and miso and fish sauce, things like that. This is a way where I can get the essence of soy sauce without actually having to use soy sauce.
Yeah.
So if you have an aversion to soy, which unfortunately I do, this can be a really good way to kind of bring some of that flavor in.
Got it.
It's probably not something that you would use in a lot of Asian food because of
it's already there.
Inherently salty.
Yeah.
So, but if you want to bring that that essence to a steak or to a piece of chicken or a seafood salad, little things like that. Like these are little tricks that we have that we can do with food that will introduce flavors that you might not. How do I say it? It enhances flavors. Of course, Himalayan pink salt. I always have this on hand. This is large rock crystals, and so you're going to need a good spice grinder or salt shaker. I love these. So yeah, I just do this on my food. The Himalayan salt, it really is not, again, it's like a seasoning or a finishing salt because it's a really clean taste. It's not very salty, not when you compare it to kosher salt. So no, I'm not going to dump a handful of that in my pasta water. The cool thing about Himalayan sea salt are all the trace minerals that it contains. There's really a lot of good nutrition in that salt. And the reason that Himalayan pink salt is so popular is it really is very clean. Those salt deposits were deposited thousands of years ago, deep beneath the earth, and they've been relatively protected from pollution. So a lot of people, a lot of health Nazis really love the Himalayan pink salt. Maldon, this is a salt you saw me use to finish with.
Yeah.
So this is really cool. This is and you probably can't see it on the camera, but it's really big flakes. And it's just pure salt. This comes from the UK. And the flakes are beautiful. They look like little diamonds. So a lot of times chef will use this not just for the flavor, but it's aesthetically pleasing. It's pretty. If you get a beautiful, like a piece of flatbread, like a lavash or a cracker with just a sprinkling of this salt on it, you can bake it. The salt's not going to dissolve. And it'll just sit there like a little shiny diamond. And when you bite into it, you just get that little crunch and that little burst of saltiness. It's really, really fun stuff.
So that's probably they use that maybe on a lot of desserts, chocolate chip cookies or things like that.
You will see it like a chocolate torte with a beautiful, ganache over the top. Or a caramel tart. A lot of times it goes great with caramel because you just put a few sprinkles on top and you get that sweetness of the caramel or the chocolate, and then you get that bite of that beautiful little diamond flake, and it just takes the flavor to a whole other place.
So, see, I've made the mistake of actually using just regular sea salt, and I've never been able, now I know why I'm not replicating that effect.
Yeah, the salt makes a difference because now sea salt, here's the other thing. Sea salt has a lot of moisture in it, right? Because it's harvested from water, whereas the other stuff is either turned into a brine and then all the water's evaporated from it, or it's harvested like in big chunks like rock salt. But sea salt still has a lot of moisture in it, so it doesn't sprinkle well and it doesn't flake well. So I would get yourself some Maldon. You get it on. It's not very expensive at all. Himalayan pink salt also comes in big rocks like this. I don't have any with me, but what's fun about the pink salt too is you can buy little shot glasses made out of it. You can actually cook with it. We used to do that in some cooking classes that I teach. We'd cook on the Himalayan pink salt slabs because they're a conductor of heat, and it really adds a saltiness to food without overdoing it.
So, if you have one of those salt lamps in your bedroom, can you just start grinding that down and using it in your food?
I imagine you probably could. It's made out of the same thing. But I love to try different types of salt. This is one called Paper Lantern that I picked up at the farmers market in San Francisco at the Ferry Building. Most farmers markets will have a salt vendor, and this is generally what they'll do is they'll take a sea salt, like a grease, and they will just infuse it with their own flavors. You can do the same thing at home. You can take a nice, like, let's see, this is a fleur de sel that I bought. This one comes from Guatemala and is harvested by hand. And then I could season this any way I want. I could smoke it. If you have a smoker, you can smoke your salts. You can infuse them with any manner of herbs and spices, kind of like the truffle salt. So that's all that this is from the farmer's market. But I like to try other people's recipes, so to speak, if they intrigue me. And this one intrigued me. So that's why I bought it. But now there's a company that I love called The Meadow. And that's where I get a lot of my salts from around the world. And when you buy a salt from The Meadow, it will tell you everything about it. It will tell you where it came from, the process in which the salt was derived. This one used solar energy, which basically means they take water from the ocean, they put it in a pool. Sometimes it's just like a little hole dug in the ground. Sometimes it's a little bit more industrial, but they'll take the salt water and they expose it to the sun and the wind. And through the natural process of evaporation, salt crystals will form. And then they harvest those crystals by hand. And like wine, we talked about this when we did the wine tasting at your house. Like wine, salt has its own terroir. So this one comes from Guatemala. It has properties in it that are unique to the water source that they use. This is a Molokai red sea salt from Hawaii.
I would have guessed that because it was Molokai.
Oh, you can see it.
No, because of the name Molokai.
Oh, because of the name. But yeah, this comes from the waters around Molokai, and it's blended with clay.
That's called the Pacific Ocean.
Very good. But not only do you have salts that are specific to their region, a lot of your sea salts can come from France, the Mediterranean, Greece, Spain, Italy. They all produce their own sea salts, and they all are specific to the region where they came from, because if you've ever swallowed water in the Pacific Ocean and swallowed water in the Atlantic Ocean, you probably know they don't taste the same.
No, it also matters where you swallow it too. How close to the shore you are.
Yes.
But the other thing, like Himalayan salt. So you mentioned that, but Himalayan salt, as I read recently, isn't necessarily from Himalaya or from the Himalayas.
Right. It has to do more with, it's all called Himalayan pink salt. I think originally it came from that part of the world, but those salt deposits are actually found in other parts of the world too. So, not Himalayas.
So we've talked a lot about kind of some regional European salts, but are there kind of Middle Eastern, African, Madagascar? I mean, mad salt can be found everywhere.
Yeah.
What are the more prized salts that you know of that are either very expensive or a little bit difficult to find because of their scarcity?
Still generally the salt that comes from Brittany, the fleur de sel or the fleur de gris. It's gray, it's wet, it's hand harvested, it's still produced the artisanal way, the way it's been done for centuries. That salt, when you find the real deal, it sells for about $30 a pound. That's probably one of your more more expensive, more prized salts.
That's still, I mean, I know $30 actually doesn't sound terrible for a pound.
Yeah, no, I have some, but I don't have a pound of it. I only, I don't use. I
Yeah,
don't
that's kind of my point is that like you're not going to use, it's going to take you a long time to use a pound of salt.
exactly like this is one. I have salt from Cyprus. I wanted to show a couple of more interesting ones too. Here's one from Iceland, and it's black because of the lava.
Oh, interesting.
This one is actually comes from the Arctic seawater, using 100% geothermal energy, and it's colored with activated charcoal. So, what would I use this on? It's probably more of an aesthetic thing, you know. And then you also can have sweet salts like chocolate.
Chocolate salt?
Yeah, and like before you mentioned the wine salt too. So chocolate salt, what would this go good on? Believe it or not, a soft cheese.
Really?
Yeah.
So what kind of subject that we're getting into very interesting territory
Well,
because most people don't put chocolate or salt on their already possibly salty cheese. So,
well, okay. Think of this. Now some people are like chocolate and cheese, but who doesn't love chocolate cheesecake?
well,
Right?
yeah, true.
Chocolate and cheese. So it's not as sweet, but you can take there are uh, there are some really good young fresh cheeses, kind of like a farmer's cheese or even a mascarpone or something. And if you had that with berries and a sprinkling of this salt, you'd have this really great flavor combination because you'd have the salt, the sweet, the cream, the texture, the fruit.
Wow. That's
It
interesting.
kind of
I would have
opens your
never.
mind to different ideas and different combinations. And then I would challenge you to pick the wine that would go good with that.
Yeah, pick the wine that would go good with chocolate. So it like a red is what is immediately coming to mind, but God, I'm gonna have to noodle on that one. I mean, I work in the wine industry, but I'm kind of a wine idiot when it comes to a lot of the people I work with because they're just amazing. Like their radar is so tuned in. In fact, I have a one of my work colleagues is going to be coming on in the near future. We're going to be talking about Italian wine history. She loves the whole history of Italian wine, and she's Italian, and she sells for her company, and she just is like this wealth of knowledge. So she's going to come and talk about that. And I'll have to ask her, like, because I've honestly, I've never even heard of that chocolate and salt. Okay, so, but you mentioned
Well,
so putting it on fruit or berries or things like that.
right, but I was going to say, you say chocolate and salt, but what about all the candy bars at the grocery store? I'm not talking about your Hershey bars. I'm talking about your better quality, your Lindt and Lindor and stuff that are chocolate with sea salt in them.
Well, this is true. Yeah, I get, it's not such a wild idea, but you never think of it. I mean, sprinkled
In
on
in
that.
a savory application, yeah.
Yeah, like I've
I'm
never.
sure that it could even go well with blue cheese.
Yeah. So salt and cheese. I will say this, like something that blew my mind was like fresh fruit and cheese, like pears with cheese. And
Yeah.
that was something new for me. And now I feel dumb because I'm like, yeah, of course cheese and fruit goes great together. But the first time I tried it, I was completely like that messed with my head because I couldn't get past the fact that I was eating fruit and cheese.
Well, see, that's what's so fun for us in the world of food because we love discovering these things. We love discovering new flavor combinations and new ways to use ingredients and kind of, bending your mind and realizing, oh, that does work. Like that goes really good together. And I always take it back to Ratatouille when Remy is trying to explain to the other rat, and he says, and you bite this and you bite that, and all the colors that are going off, that's kind of how it is for us. We get excited in that way, and then we want to share that with other people, and they're like, no, I don't think that's going to work. And you're like, yes, it is. And let me show you. And it's really exciting when people make that discovery and they enjoy it as much as we do.
Yeah, and then or they're like, do you have any more chicken nuggets, cheese sticks, and macaroni and cheese?
Yeah, we get that now and then, but you know what? That's fine. There is a world for people that love Velveeta and chicken nuggets and ranch. And it's not my world, but that's okay. My audience.
Yeah, it's a kind of an American delicacy. I was watching a TikTok recently of this girl over in Ireland, and she had never had ranch dressing, and ranch is like one of those things that's kind of that's kind of the house dressing in most restaurants, or in a lot of restaurants. And
Not
she
a
had never had
fan.
ranch dressing, and somebody sent it to her, and so she tried it first with chicken wings, and then pizza, and then potatoes, like fried potato. And she was just like, "How come I've never heard of this? And it's the most amazing thing."
So did you like it?
She loved it.
Oh wow, that's funny.
So,
Funny. Well, I mean, really, ranch dressing is it's a simple condiment. It's basically milk with onion and garlic. Those are the most prominent flavors in ranch dressing, and most people love onion and garlic, and you put it in a creamy format, and voila. Plus, it's really salty.
this is
But I
true.
think
I just buy it in a packet and throw some buttermilk and sour cream, and
now I make, if I make ranch dressing, I use all fresh ingredients, and I must say, it's like we'll do a wedge salad sometimes with bacon and tomato and homemade ranch, and that's about the only time I'll eat it. The stuff in the bottle just tastes like chemicals to me, but
I know,
not
but
people
it's good
like
for
it,
you.
but my aversion to it is just that it's the only thing people want, and they put it on everything, and whatever you put it on just tastes like ranch.
Well, this is true. It does
So
overpower everything.
it overpowers everything it touches. So yeah, but to each his own. We're all just living our life the way we want. So
So what? Any other salts to showcase, or did you go through your whole?
my other salts are basically the same. They're just from different parts of the world. They have different courses. Some are very coarse, like this one. This is a finishing salt that actually comes from Oregon. And then you can always get your flavored salts. Like this is garlic. It's a very, very strong garlic flavor. I love garlic, so this is a great finishing salt. If you go to the Meadow is run by a man named Mark Bitterman, who considers himself the sommelier of salts. He's actually published several books about salt. And if you go to their website, plug for the Meadow, I wish they'd give me some free salt for plugging them, but they have over 100 different varieties of salt.
Now, do
It
they do all the seasoning in house there for their salts?
um Some of it they do. A lot of the salt they just import from all over the world, and they'll sell it as it is, as they're buying it. But some of it, yeah, they do create their own salts. The garlic salt is one of theirs. That's why it says Mark Bitterman Craft Salt on it. But they do a lot of the wine salts as well. It's kind of fun. It's fun to peruse through their website and just look after salt after salt. But it's also fun for me because I can see all the places where these salts are coming from and the different ways that they're harvested and processed. And, for me, it just kind of sets my mind reeling. Ooh, what would I do with that? But I think their website is a great place to go to if you really want to play with some salts that you're not going to find at your local grocery store.
That is really cool. I mean, I had no idea. You gave me a little bit of an idea in a few minutes when you were over here, but it's just it's crazy the number of things, and we'll give a little bit of a plug for you because you're working on this project, and one of the things that I think about is recipes. Like, where would you find recipes to put all this stuff? And you're actually working on a project around that. We won't give away any details yet, but just know, be on the lookout for Melissa Monsibais and her upcoming project. When it debuts, we'll have you back and we'll talk all about it, because that is going to be a great place for you to showcase all of these things, all of these things that you have in there.
All of this weird kooky knowledge that only nerdy food people care about.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's
No, it is fun, and I think there are a lot of people that have interest in it. And another passion of mine, butter. Oh my gosh, how I love butter.
Well, yeah, it's funny. Butter, eggs, like Chop's Kitchen, by the way, chopskitchen.com, another website you guys should check out, does a lot of stuff with duck eggs. And I had never thought of cooking with duck eggs, or baking, I should say, even with duck eggs, but because there's a higher protein and fat content in them that helps what you're baking just come out a little better. European butter, because it's got a higher fat content in it and it makes stuff just more delicious. And one of the things I noticed is when I was over in Ireland is, there's this when you start tasting European dairy, whether it's milk or ice cream or butter, you really taste the difference in the way that they do things there versus the way that we have it done here.
Yeah, there is a French butter that is considered the world's best that I am dying to get my hands on, but the only two places you can get it are in France, where it's made, in this particular town. They've got 2 shops that sell it. And the only place you can get it in the U.S. is in New York City. There's a shop now that has started importing it to New York City, but they do not ship. The only place they ship it to is New York.
Well, right now they're probably not even open, so.
Right, and but I was planning to go, but
well, I know some people up in New York. Maybe I can, if they're open, I can get somebody to swing by and ship it down.
I would love that. I really would.
We happen to, I always feature wine because I work in the wine industry, and some of our wine salespeople are based in New York. So I'll have to.
Wow. I'll give you the name of the store and the name of the butter, and they can buy as much of it as they can possibly get and ship it to me, and I will gladly pay for it.
I think the challenge too in the shipping is the keeping it from I don't say melting. I guess do it in the winter.
I would
be easier.
freeze it and pack it with ice. Those little frozen little cooler things. I would freeze it and ship it overnight.
Well, yeah, we'll have to do something on butter
for this butter.
Because that will be interesting. Well, awesome. Okay, I got one last question, and this one came from my friend Binley, who we had on the last episode talking about Sangster's coffee. And he said, if you're going to be talking about salt, I got a question. He says, how come there's an expiration date on salt?
What kind of salt does he?
Maybe he's buying table salt.
Well, here's the thing. Now, salt is used as a preservative, as it has been for centuries, right? And I don't believe salt actually expires, but with our modern food processing and FDA and health and safety regulations and whatnot, everything has a best by date on it. It just does. And that's more to protect the manufacturer, because some people ain't too bright and they might buy something and not store it properly and pull something out of the cellar 4 years later and say, hey, you sold me a bad product. So
It's kind of like honey, because honey doesn't really expire either.
oh no, honey never goes bad. They found it in King Tut's tomb. So it's but you'll notice every bottle of honey has an expiration or a best by date on it. So that's just our government doing what our government does.
Get in our way and mess things up.
Well, it's to protect the manufacturer. That's why we have best by and use by dates. The product can't read the date printed on the label.
I thought it was big salt. Trying to get you to buy more salt.
But as long as you have things properly stored and kept from contaminants, there's no reason why it would have an expiration date.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on and educating everybody about salt. That was really cool. Before we break, I do want to just announce something to the Satisfactionist listeners and folks who are out there checking out the podcast and live stream. We have launched a merchandise site, and we did this for a few reasons. One is I want to continue to keep making content and doing some very interesting things with content. And a lot of the guests that come on here, they do it for free and for fun, because it's kind of cool to hang out and talk about these things. But I would love to give back a little bit to that, and then raise the production value of things, and maybe have people running the board for me so that I'm able to just talk directly to you instead of having to play with all the knobs and switches as I'm going through things. So would love to do more. And so we set up this merchandise shop. You can find it at satisfactionist.com. On there, you'll see a little link for the merch shop. And then you can also find us on Redbubble at Satisfactionist. And anything that you purchase there, a little bit comes back our way, and we're always appreciative of that. And right now we have about 30 different designs out there, everything ranging from logo of the show to really a lot of stuff focused on themed around positive psychology, because that's a lot of what we talk about at Satisfactionist, and kind of spread the word of positivity. So if you get a chance, check it out at satisfactionist.com. Check out the merch shop. Otherwise, and until next time, I'd like to thank you guys for checking us out. Actually not next week, this Thursday, we're going to be having a conversation with, I believe it's going to be Lisa Faye. Or if we have some scheduling conflicts as we did last week, we might have to change it up a little bit. But check us out again Thursday. We will be back 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Thank you all very much. Until next time, have a good one.